Members, good afternoon. This is the 7th day of the Chinese New Year, so let's wish everybody a Happy New Year. This is the start of our meeting. Right, this is the 7th day of the Chinese New Year, so I wish everyone good health and happiness. Welcome to the meeting of the panel on housing. This is a special meeting. We're going to discuss the long-term housing arrangements for residents of Wang Fuk Court. This is the appointed time. We have a quorum. The meeting has begun. Your name cards will be placed in front of you. Let me welcome the Deputy Financial Secretary and the Secretary for Housing and their team to our meeting.
Hi. 先請司長同埋
Let me invite the Deputy Financial Secretary, the Secretary for Housing, and their team to our meeting.
唔該司長、局長同埋
Deputy FS, Secretary, and the two government officials, thank you for coming. Now we are joined by Ms. Estrella Cheung, Deputy Secretary for Housing, as well as Ms. Sherry Young, Assistant Director of Housing Department. I will invite the Deputy Financial Secretary to walk us through the long-term housing arrangements for residents of Wang Fuk Court. Thank you. The government announced the long-term housing arrangements for residents of Wang Fuk Court 2 days ago, and I am very grateful for Chairman and members of this panel for inviting me to attend today's meeting so that we can explain the arrangements to members. Well, let me first explain the questionnaire survey. Through the One Social Worker per Household service, we distributed questionnaires to affected residents. I want to emphasize here and now that the responses given by residents in the questionnaire would not affect our future decisions. Now, this is the original intention because we understand that things continue to change, and we floated the reference price of acquisition, and that the reference price was provided by the Hong Kong Institute of Surveyors using sellable area as the basis. It's $6,000 per square foot for those with premium unpaid and $8,000 for premium paid. And then we received a response from 99% of residents, that's 1,975 households. So let's go through this slide. The majority owners were of the view that speed is essential. That means we have to resolve the problem as quickly as possible. As we all know, we have those living in transitional housing and also those getting $12,500 a month in subsidy to rent their own place. And this is their major wish. Now, if we delve further into the response of the 1,975 households, 74% of them would consider accepting the government's title acquisition. Now, I emphasize that this doesn't mean they have accepted. 14% have not yet decided, and 12% have expressed rejection to the title acquisition suggestion. Now, if we take a look at the 1,485 households' responses. 41% will accept acquisition by cash or under flat-for-flat arrangement. 39% will only accept acquisition under the flat-for-flat arrangement, and 20% will only accept acquisition by cash. Now, turning to the next point, for those who will consider accepting the government's title acquisition, 81%, that's 1,182 households out of 1,458, will require further support from the government, including the provision of subsidized sale flats such as HOS and GSH, and 276 households said that after accepting cash for title acquisition, they will make their own arrangements. So, next question. In relation to 1,182 households which will consider the subsidized sale flats offered by the government, we allow them different choices. Now, multiple choices, in fact. On average, each household have picked 2 or 3 choices. Now, for Kai Yang Court in Kai Tak, this is the most popular option. The intake will start in October 2028. As for Xingqi Court, intake will begin in the 4th quarter of this year. This is the second popular choice. Now, of course, there are those who have opted for the projects in the same district, but that's not the most popular choice. It's an observation. In situ redevelopment, now that's really the concern of many people. Only 9% will only accept in situ redevelopment. So that means for the 12%, as mentioned before, 9% of them will not accept any proposal other than in situ redevelopment. As for others, they will consider other options, but they also mentioned in situ redevelopment. I will now invite Ms. Winnie Ho, Secretary, to brief you on the overall condition of the 7 fire-affected blocks at Wang Fuk Court. Thank you, DFS. These 7 blocks were directly exposed to the blaze, and after we've put out the fire, we invited experts of the Hong Kong University to take samples from the affected blocks for the purpose of checking if there was any imminent danger of building collapse. Now, for buildings seriously affected by the blaze, the shear walls, the external walls, beams, floor slabs were all affected. There was also concrete spalling with bent rebar exposed, and we also put in place measures to strengthen the structure. And yet, after prolonged heating of concrete from intense fire and then rapidly cooled down during firefighting operations, numerous micro cracks were formed. These micro cracks would cause high risks in the long term when it comes to building maintenance and repair. These micro cracks could cause concrete to fall. There would also be a risk of dislodged concrete and rebar as well. They will be exposed to humidity, and as a result, there would be rust. There would be the risk of rusting of the rebars. It's very difficult to estimate the costs entailed for building maintenance in order to meet the requirements in the buildings ordinance, not to mention the facilities such as electricity supply, water supply, lifts, so on and so forth, which have all been damaged. It's really hard to gauge how much should be put in order to meet the requirements in the respective legislation. So according to our assessment, there is no cost-effective solution to reasonably restore the buildings to their functionality and long-term safety, durability, in the long term. So we are of the view that these 7 blocks should be demolished. I now brief members on the plan for long-term housing arrangements. The government has devised the plan based on the following principles. First, we consider the wishes of the affected families whilst balancing empathy, reason, and law with priority given to empathy. Second, we provide a variety of options so that residents have a real choice. Third, we provide a long-term housing option in Tai Po. Fourth, we ensure the efficient use of public resources. Considering the 7 fire-affected blocks, that's blocks A to G at Wang Fuk Court, they comprise 1,736 units. The scale of the disaster is unprecedented, and there is no current effective market mechanism to assist the affected households. Without the government's strong and specific intervention, owners will find it extremely difficult to sell their flats, and the money invested in their homes over the years will likely become worthless. The government then decide to make acquisition offers to owners of blocks A to G by cash or flat-for-flat arrangement. This will offer the fastest and most flexible means of resolving the long-term housing needs of the affected owners and residents. Now, becoming the owner of the units, the government will then assume and manage the various legal and insurance risks as well as the uncertainties associated with the procedures and time frame. Now, on acquisition, based on the sellable area, we will provide the affected owner $8,000 per square foot for flats with premium unpaid and also $10,500 for premium paid. And the uniform standards will apply to all units. In drawing up the acquisition price, the government has considered the following. First, residents have lost their homes and suffered significant losses. Their difficult circumstances warrant understanding and support from society. Second, the Wang Fuk Court fire is unprecedented with far-reaching implications. So this is a special case of exceptional nature which will not serve as a precedent. Third, we believe that the proposed acquisition price will allow affected families to relocate and secure long-term housing. The government will acquire title from 1,700 plus households of Wang Fuk Courts, and we estimate that the total acquisition cost will stand at $6.8 billion. Around $2.8 billion will be drawn from the support fund for Wang Fuk Court in Tai Po, and that means around $4 billion of public money will have to be injected. Although part of the losses may be recovered at a later stage through insurance claims, it remains highly complex and uncertain in terms of legal issues, procedures, and processing time. When the government becomes the insured and becomes the owner of Wang Fuk Court, the government will take responsibility. As for Wang Shi Court, the situation is very different from the other 7 blocks. Wang Shi Court was not affected by the fire. However, certain necessary repair and management arrangements must be carried out. In fact, Ms. Alice Mack, the secretary, spoke to the media a few days ago. Now, this is a preliminary estimation. It will take about 3 to 4 months' time before residents of Wang Shi Court can return to their homes. We also note that some owners of Wang Shi Court have on different occasions indicated their wish to resume long-term residence in their original units. As Wang Shi Court can still provide accommodation, we must respect property rights. Unless owners of Wang Shi House reach a high degree of consensus and would like the government's plan to cover Wang Shi Court as Wang Shi House as well, it will be difficult for the government to intervene further. Now, in fact, if the government is only able to acquire a small number of units in Wang Shi House, issues relating to land leases, deeds of mutual covenant or common areas could not be effectively resolved. So, the government's acquisition proposal at this stage does not cover Wang Shi House. However, if the owners are able to reach a high degree of consensus, the government will be willing to further explore this possibility. I will invite Ms. Ho to speak on the details.
Thank you, Deputy Financial Secretary, and thank you, Chairman. I will explain our acquisition offer. Now, upon selling of the title to government, they would receive an amount of cash that would give them flexibility to purchase flags to the liking in the private market, or they can save up a portion of the acquisition offer and use the remaining to buy a flag. Now, if the residents would like to purchase a new subsidized sales flag, we will have a special sales exercise for them. There will be 10 projects for the owners to choose from. For those residents who would prefer a flags for flags option, we do provide such an option under our current design. We would offer the owner a flags for flags voucher at the same value of our acquisition offer, so that the owners can use the voucher to choose the flags from our sales exercise, and we have the pay more or get refunded arrangement. Now, this slide shows the existing projects on hand. There are 10 projects, among which 6 belong to the GSH and HOS 2025 exercise. At Taibo, there is the Phase 1 of Chonga Road West. That's the existing sites in the same district. We were building the site as a public rental housing project with site formation completed. But since the plan is still adjustable, we have adjusted the plan to provide some 400 HOS flags first. Both phases will provide 900 and 600 units together. There will also be projects provided by the Housing Society. The Housing Society has given us their support, so there will be 100 flags from the Parkwalk Road projects and also 300 from the Anderson Road project. Altogether, there will be 3,900 flags to choose from. According to the questionnaire, there are some 1,180 households which would like to have a new subsidized sales flag. So 3,900 units would mean 3 times that demand. Now, we will set a fixed price for the owner who would like to purchase a new subsidized sales flag. For example, the Chonga Road West site, the average price per square foot in sellable area is a little bit about below 7,000. So our offer means that there would be some money left after buying the flags. Now, for the Housing Society projects, those would be more expensive. So it would give the owners flexibility to choose a more expensive flag, a bigger flag in closer to the urban area, or a smaller flag in a more remote area. Now, for the acquisition offer, there are 4 flag sizes as the Wang Fuk Court, from 431 square feet to 483 square feet, and they are both premium paid and premium unpaid flags. The acquisition prices are set out on the table. Our offer ranges from $3.45 million to $5 million. For the flag for flag arrangement, let's take the example of a flag value at $3.74 million. So we would offer a flag for flag voucher as the value of $3.74 million. So if the owner chooses a smaller flag, there would be some surplus. So if the owner chooses a flag of comparable size in a different district, there would still be some money left. If the owner chooses a larger sized flag in a more sought-after area, then the owner may have to pay some additional money. Now, for flag selection priority, in this special sales exercise, there will be some 3,900 units set aside for Wang Fuk Court owners. For owners who accept our acquisition offer, you have to bear in mind this date, that is the 31st of August. You must indicate your offer to us before that date. If you can indicate your decision before the 30th of June, then you will be batch 1 owners who will be given priority in flag selection. For owners of the same batch, that we would conduct a ballot to decide the priority. So there are 2 batches of owners. Those before the 30th of June and those before the 31st of August. The exercise will commence in September 2026. Now, the Wang Fuk Court is quite old, some 40 years of age, so all the alienation restrictions have essentially ended. So for this special sales exercise, there will not be an alienation restriction. However, if you are selling the flags in the open market, you still have to pay the premium. So there is a lot of details and different options in the arrangement. Owners may have a lot of questions involving their decisions and also the details, so we will establish an engagement team. Now, the one social worker per household arrangement is very helpful in helping the residents. And we need to familiarize the volunteers with the details. So we will train up the engagement teams first, and then the one social worker per household arrangement would refer cases to the engagement team. So please rest assured there will be referrals made by the social workers to the engagement teams. And owners may explain their decisions to the engagement teams. So this is the uniform of the engagement team. There will be a 100-strong engagement team formed by the Housing Bureau. Now, our manpower is insufficient for that, so we thank the Home Affairs Bureau, the Youth Affairs Bureau, and also the Labour and Welfare Bureau for helping us. They will carry their own identity cards. Thank you. Thank you, DFS and Secretary. Now, we have both members and non-panel members here who are concerned with the topic. The floor is now open for your questions. The number is overwhelming. Now, for technical issues, please raise it to the help. Now, we have 38 members who have indicated a wish to speak. Time is tight, so I suggest we each have 3 minutes, questions and answers included, to accommodate as many members as possible. Two hours may not be sufficient, so I suggest extending the meeting by 30 minutes. Is that agreed? I remind members, if you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest concerning this topic, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak according to Rules of Procedures, Rule number 83A. I also bring to your attention the rules for voting in matters in which you have direct pecuniary interest with according to RP 84. Now the floor is now open. I will read out the names of members who are going to speak. There are many. I will read out the first half to save time. Mr. Chen Pui-leung, Nick Chen, Wu Yingpang, Dominic Lee, Aaron Bok, Robert Lee, Peter Schill, Ms. Carmen Kan, Chong Ho Fong, Ms. Christine Fong, Mr. Chen Hock Fong, Chen Chou Kwong, Tam Chen Kwok Holden Chow, Reverend Peter Kuhn, Mr. Robert Lee, Mr. Michael Lee, and that's so far for now. The first member to speak is Mr. Chen Pui Leung. As I said, 3 minutes for each member. Mr. Chen. Thank you, Chairman. I declare interest. The company I'm working with is an insurer of the Wang Fuk Court. So first of all, I support the long-term accommodation arrangements. Now, realistically speaking, as mentioned by the DFS, there will be a lot of insurance claim. This is an unprecedented disaster involving a large number of households, some 2,000 units. So insurance is a very complicated and challenging matter. We have private units and also units belonging to the common areas. And there are some households with the owner deceased, and that would involve probate and inheritance. So all these would lengthen the time required for insurance claim. So the acquisition arrangement offered by the government would be more direct and simple. It would offer a long-term accommodation for the affected residents, and there would be more certainty. After acquisition of all the property rights, insurers will be happy to work with the governments in terms of insurance claims. I have 3 simple questions. There is one building which is not affected, that is Wang Chi House. And the government said if more than half of the residents there agree, then the government would consider covering Wang Chi House in the plan. So will there be a deadline for that negotiation? Will the timetable be aligned with the other 7 blocks? Now, according to many residents, they would like to return to their home to retrieve their belongings. Now, the situation is urgent. So can the government allow the residents to return to their home by batches? Now, about the use of the original site, the government has considered using the site for leisure or other purposes. So may I suggest using the site to establish a temple museum there, because we have a very rich temple culture in Hong Kong. That would be a soothing site, and also that would be a tourist attraction in the future as well. Members, I remind you, you have to save some time for the government to reply to you. You only have 3 minutes. Please give the member a brief reply. Chairman, I thank Mr. Chen for his support for our plan. Now, we don't have a time limit for the Wang Chi House residents to reach a consensus. Now, for the other 7 blocks, the residents have to make a decision by the end of August. But we understand that Wang Chi House residents need more time, so there is not a time limit. In terms of the arrangement for returning home, the task force led by Mr. Chow Wik-heng is now actively arranging for that. They will make an announcement soon. About the use of the original site. After acquisition of all the property title of the 7 blocks, they will not be rebuilt for housing. We are considering options like building a park or other uses. Next, Mr. Ling Chen.
In relation to the proposed long-term housing arrangements for residents of Wang Fuk Court, I really appreciate the government's thinking. Now, I am a lawyer by profession, so I understand that it will take a long time to go through the legal proceedings. It's very complex and costly for owners of individual units to take the matter to the court. So, as I've heard, the affected residents also find this arrangement reasonable. Now, my question is this. According to the government's proposal, residents of Wang Shi House will not be compelled to sell the flats. So this is also the safeguards offered under Article 6 of the Basic Law, that's protection of private property rights. Now my question is this, what if the flat is co-owned? Will there be a mechanism to allow two co-owners to buy two separate flats? Thank you, Mr. Nick Chan, for your support. You also understand that the government will follow up on the issues relating to legal uncertainties. Now, the principle is that for those living in public, those who will be living in public housing, is not entirely impossible, but that the principle is to go for flat arrangements. Mr. Wu Yingpeng. Thank you, DFS, for your introduction. Now, on title acquisition, I have the following observation. The government is going to acquire titles from owners of the 7 blocks. These 7 blocks are beyond repair or maintenance, and yet the government still offers such a generous price for the acquisition of titles. I don't think this is logical. And like the Secretary for Development said, that when it comes to title acquisition is a special arrangement as part of the government's disaster relief effort. And according to the questionnaire survey of the 1,975 households, 74% of them will consider accepting the government's title acquisition offer. 14%, however, have not decided. I think there is a chance for them to accept the government's acquisition offer. Now, even for the 12% of respondents who have categorically said no to acquisition, they might in the end change their mind because of the new acquisition price proposed. So there is room for further negotiation with the owners because of the appeal of the government's proposal. So, based on my 3 observations, I don't think at this stage the government needs to invoke the Land Resumption Ordinance or make use of other legislative means to acquire title. Rather, through mutual discussion and negotiations, we can resolve this matter without going for legislative enactment. I also welcome the government's approach in putting empathy first, and the government will establish an engagement team to explain the proposal to affected residents. And I thank you, Chairman. This is my comment. I have no questions for the administration. Right, thank you, Mr. Wu, for your comment. I don't think the DFS needs to answer that. We move on to the next one, Mr. Dominic Lee. The government has put forward this proposal with multiple options for different affected residents of Wang Fuk Court, and I fully appreciate the government's proposal. I support it, but I have a question. For residents of Wang Chi House. Now, you explained that this proposal does not cover residents of Wang Chi House because they have yet to reach a high degree of consensus. Now, I understand that this was the position when the questionnaire surveys were questionnaires were collected. At that time, residents could not move back in. They also faced different challenges, such as the matter of reselling their flats. and also community facilities. Now that you have collected the feedback, will you arrange for another questionnaire survey for Wang Chi House residents to express their wish again? Now, right after the fire, you arranged for residents of Wang Chi House to go back to their homes to pick up their belongings on one occasion. But what about other blocks? Will you consider allowing the affected residents to go home and tidy up as soon as possible? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your support. To address the 2 points, we understand residents wish to go back and just take a look at their flats as early as possible. This is known to Mr. Churk as well as Ms. Mack, the secretaries. They will make announcements when there is progress. As for owners of Wang Chi House, now through one social worker per household, we will strive to contact them and ask what they want. Well, I just want to say that we've been receiving calls from residents of Wang Chi House. They ask why Wang Chi House is not covered. Right, like I said, we'll be happy to negotiate with the residents when they have reached a high degree of consensus. Next, Mr. Aaron Bok. Thank you, Chair. I want to show my appreciation for the DFS and the Secretary for putting forward such an arrangement that have had regard to empathy, reasoning, and logic. Now, in particular, I understand that 83% of owners would like to have the solution implemented as quickly as possible. 74% would like to consider accepting the government's title acquisition so that they have a roof over their head in the long term. There are different options available, paying cash or flat-for-flat arrangements, including the Chung A Road West project. Now, $4 billion will have to be injected through insurance claims. Part of this sum can be offset, but I want to ask how the government will pursue this insurance claim. And about in situ redevelopment, can we build a railway museum or bus museum at that location? There is a railway museum in Taipo, but it's really not accessible. DFS. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bok. We considered different options, including in situ redevelopment. But as we have emphasized on a number of occasions, it will take at least 3 years to acquire all titles. And in fact, many members have told us that we're being too optimistic. It takes 18 years to take down the 7 blocks and 4 or 5 more years to redevelop the blocks. Now, on building structure insurance, in fact, we've also explained very clearly that after acquiring titles to the blocks, the government will become the insured. And in fact, as Mr. Chan Pui Leung already explained, after acquiring titles, we still need to resolve various legal issues. We don't want to cause any delay for the sake of our affected residents, and that is why we're going to fork out $4 billion from the public coffers before we pursue the claim. We could claim up to $1 or $2 billion, but then the ultimate amount will depend on the outcome of legal proceedings. We are unsure exactly what amount we'll be able to get through insurance claims, but we need to inject $4 billion. The uncertainty of the amount should not get in our way of helping affected residents. Right, but from what I gathered, Mr. Bok's point is for the government to claim as much as you can. Right, as long as it's within the law. Next, Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to express my condolences to families of the deceased as well as my sympathy for those affected by the fire. There is no perfect solution to restore Wang Fuk Court but the latest proposal floated by the government offers a long-term housing arrangements for them so that the victims of the disaster could go back to their normal lives as quickly as possible. Now, from the questionnaires feedback, 74% of respondents will consider the government's acquisition offer. As for the per square foot price, if we take a look at the transactions in 2024-25, on average, the per square foot price would be similar. And there is also the flat-for-flat arrangements on top of cash payments. So I need to praise the government for completing this task within a short period of time. I also support the injection of $4 billion into the fund. I have 2 points to make, however. Like Mr. Chen Pui-leung said, there may be complex legal proceedings involving owners who have passed away and other probate issues, and that the deadline for the first batch is the 30th of June. So what if owners are happy to accept the government's offer only that they face some complex legal problems? Will there be flexibility for these affected owners? My second point is this. At this stage, you talk about injecting $4 billion of public money into the fund. But after acquiring titles, the government will need to follow up on all the legal and insurance issues. So can you share with us whether you have conducted internal assessments as to ultimately how much you can get through insurance claims? Thank you for your support. About the building structure insurance, the maximum amount is $2 billion, but ultimately the exact amount will depend on the legal proceedings outcome. It's hard to assess now. For probate issues, we do have special arrangements. The probate's office has undertaken to speed things up, but if cases are too complex, and by the end of August, if owners are unable to proceed, then we keep all options open. That means we continue to make this title acquisition offer. But if the decision is made by next year, then it won't come from the special sale exercise, but the 12,000 HUS flats, which will be available the following year. Mr. Peter Shou. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wang and your team for coming up with these options in your proposed arrangement within a short period of time. Very rarely do I hear affected residents criticize your arrangement. In fact, much of the criticism comes from somewhere else. So in terms of the per square foot acquisition price, there is little criticism. That means the affected owners are by and large happy with this arrangement. At the same time, there are voices of concern. They say the government is being too generous, and they are worried whether this will set a precedent. What happens if there is another fire? Will the victims get the same level of help? But I want to explain that this is not just an ordinary fire. If a flat is blazed, then afterwards you can just restore it through renovation and we can resell it. But for 7 blocks of Wang Fuk Court here, they are deprived of their value. They have become worthless. So even if we continue to pay subsidies for the affected victims to rent their home, we will exhaust the fund rapidly. So we need to make people understand the different options. The government is not being generous. because the government will be acquiring titles. And if we're able to claim up to $2 billion, then despite injecting $4 billion, in the end, we only pay out some $2 billion. And then we can, the government can sell the land in the end, and the valuation could very well exceed $2 billion. So I think the government should address this misconception and make people understand that it's not just about emphasizing empathy for the residents. And I think the majority of Hong Kong people would like to offer help to those in need. Now my question is about home insurance. For those who have taken out home insurance policies, will the rights be passed on to the government?
Now, actually, the situation is more complicated than that. So that's for owners' corporations insurance. For home insurance, actually, many owners have already received the insurance claim, the claim amounts for the burned properties. Ms. Carmen Kan. Thank you, Chairman. I also give my deepest condolences for the affected residents. Now, I support the government decision to announce this plan on Saturday. You have been working very hard. Now, there are some who say that the residents of the Wang Fuk house is not being given priority. But I don't think that's a fair comment. We have to balance empathy with rationality and legality. Now, there are three main reasons why this is not unfair. First of all, this is an unprecedented fire, which may not be. Wang Fuk Court is not affected by the blaze, so it is not covered by the insurance. And second, we have to respect the wish of the residents. And three, we need to protect the private property according to the basic law, and the government can only resume land when there are legal bases. So some say the government may invoke Cap 104 land resumption ordinance. I don't think that's feasible. The ordinance is clear that to invoke the ordinance, the government must, the purpose of the land must fulfill public interest, for example, building public infrastructure, railway, or even for garrison purpose. Of course, there is additional cost. The Chief Executive in Council may make a decision on that, but we cannot simply invoke the land resumption ordinance recklessly. Now, the DFS said that when there is a high degree of consensus, the government is open to negotiation with Wang Fuk house residents. I welcome that decision, but we need to conduct a study on the legality of that decision beforehand. There must be sufficient legal analysis before such a decision is made. Now, the commitment of $4 billion. That's our main purpose today. The government is seeking our support for the $4 billion commitment. But is there any other alternative to raise the fund besides using public money? I thank Ms. Carmen Kan's support for our proposal. I fully agree with Ms. Carmen Kan's interpretation on the basic law. We attach very high importance to the idea of private ownership and private property. Now, we have raised $4.4 billion. Now, I also thank the Han Hong Fund for giving each resident $5,000. We thank the fund for that. Now, we are still open to receiving more donation from the public, but there will only be fewer and fewer donators. And we need to invoke public money to address this pressing concern. And in the upcoming budget, there will be some mentioning of that. So I hope the government would show its commitments to the residents. Next, Mr. Chong Ho Fong. Now, this blaze has cost many people their homes. Now, I think the government has shown a lot of commitments and has been highly efficient in post-disaster relief, and I support the government's decision to make a special arrangement for this incident. Now, on average, each Hong Kong resident is paying some $500 to help the residents. Now, I support the government's decision to show empathy and offer a price of $10,500 for premium paid flags. However, the offer of $8,000 per square foot for premium unpaid flags, that's not logical. Now, for white and green form subsidized sales flag, they are usually sold at a price which is 70% of the market value. Now, I think the government is paying more for flags with premium unpaid. Now, I've conducted a study concerning other similar HOS flags in Chung Au Road and other housing estates in Tai Po, and also another estates in Kwai Chung. Now, the price is usually 60 to 70% of the market value. So would the government consider offering $7,000 to premium unpaid flags so as to balance empathy with rationality and spend the public money wisely? Now, about the deadline for making a decision. Now, by the 30th of June, the first batch of residents may choose a new flags from the new sales exercise. But please don't forget the Wang Chi House residents. They can only return to their home in 3 or 4 months' time. Now, back then, on the questionnaire, the offer was only $7,000 to $8,000. Now the price is higher, so maybe the Wang Chi House residents would change their mind. Now, after moving back in, the Wang Chi House residents may suffer emotional distress that they did not expect. So if the Wang Chi House residents cannot reach a consensus before June, they would lose out on this opportunity to select the flags from the new exercise with priority. I thank Mr. Chong Ho-Fung for his support. Now, there is still work to do concerning building repair and management issues. So according to Mr. Choi Wing-heng, we still need 3 or 4 months' time before the residents can return to Wang Chi House. Now, if you look at the proposal raised by the Hong Kong Institute of Surveyor, our proposal, our offers are one-third higher than theirs. So we have also made reference to the pre-fire value of a flag in Wang Fuk Court. So we would not lower the offer from $8,000 to $7,000. Now, but the figures are different. Now, 6,000 and 8,000, if we use 6,000 as the numerator, that would be one-third more. Actually, we have done the calculation a lot of times. Next, Ms. Christine Fong. Thank you, Chairman. I thank the DFS and the Secretary for your hard work. You have offered numerous options for Wang Fuk Court residents to choose from within a short period of time. Now, this has greatly reassured the residents. However, a large amount of public funds is involved, so I hope the government would tread carefully every step of the way, including the accommodation arrangements. Now, according to the questionnaire, the options include Kowloon Bay and other areas. Now, some 484 households selected the site at Wang Fuk Park in Tai Po. Now, I've also discussed the matter with the Wang Fuk Court residents. That is a very favorable choice. Now, some chose Chung Au Road, and some elderly residents would like to purchase an existing HOS flat since they are already old and they would like to have more certainty. Now, I would like to know your stance on white form secondary market. Would that be made available for the residents? Now, about the Wang Fuk Park site, there is a petrol filling station and also there is a pet-friendly park. So why are you not including the Wang Fuk Park site among the 3,900 flags to be offered? Is it because of the long building time? Because that would be a good option since it is in the same district. I thank Ms. Christine Fong for your support. Now for Wang Fuk Park, the time would simply be too long. It would take 6 to 8 years. We need to replan the area. And as you have mentioned, it's not an easy task to move the LPG filling station. So if you have already stayed for 6 to 8 years in another place, you would be attached to that location. So we think the Wang Fuk Park site is not suitable. For white form secondary market, I would defer to Ms. Winnie Ho. We do have an option for owners who would like to purchase a readily available second-hand subsidized sales flags. They can take the cash and buy a flag in the market. They will be given a green form eligibility, and they will have 2 years to choose a flag. That should be sufficient. Mr. Gary Chan. Thank you, Chairman. Now, the long-term accommodation arrangement contains a lot of suggestions made by the DAB. I think the options are human-centric and meets the residents' need. They are real options. Especially, premium housing society flags are also included, which has made the offer more attractive to residents. I have 2 questions for the DFS. There are so many options available, and they are all choosable options, but still, 9% of residents would like to see in situ redevelopment. Of course, we respect their views, but maybe when they gave that indication, there weren't so many options available yet. So will the engagement team reach out to the 9% of residents and explain the benefits of the existing proposal to them, so as to give them another opportunity to decide again? Now, for Wang Chi House residents, they would like to return to their homes to inspect the damage. But there are also other residents from the other 7 blocks to return to their burned homes to have a look. Of course, that must be done where situation is safe. Now, if there are safety concerns, can we deploy technologies, for example, use AI and virtual reality with technologies to let the residents inspect their home's conditions?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gary Chan, for your support of our proposal. About allowing residents to return to the 7 blocks just to have a look, the task force is considering various options. Now, these 7 blocks are now not equipped with lifts, and we're talking about high-rise buildings. Over 40% of these tenants are age 65 or above. But I know that the task force will be making an announcement in due course. Coming back to the engagement team, now the point is for them to explain to the households about the current situation so that they can make a wise and informed choice. Mr. Chen Shou-Kwang. Now this is a special case in exceptional circumstances, and I support the government's proposed arrangement taking into account empathy, rationality, and legality. But in the long term, I am still concerned about the possible legal risks. Although the government says that this is a special case of exceptional nature, there is still expectation among the public that the same approach will be adopted should something like this happen again. So it's about addressing public expectation. You need to avoid controversies. The second point is about Wang Chi House. The government should handle this matter very carefully. DFS, thank you, Chair. As I explained, we will be very careful in handling the matter, including the Wang Chi House residents. Mr. Kasaf Tam. Now, when we discussed Wang Fuk Court fire in the Legislative Council meeting last month, I put forward my 2 expectations. 1, the government should announce the long-term rehousing proposal or housing arrangements for affected residents. 2, residents should be allowed to make meaningful choices. The government has accepted my suggestion. Over the Chinese New Year, the government has put forward the proposed arrangement with flexibility, such as payment in cash and also flat-for-flat arrangement. The government has also heeded the views in putting forward the proposed acquisition price. This shows sincerity on the part of the government for the residents to be rehoused. Now, my question is this. The most popular options, according to the questionnaire survey, include Kaiyuan Court and Xinxi, and also the other 2 options in Taipo, but the earliest intake won't begin until the end of 2028. That will exceed the rent subsidy period currently offered. DFS already undertook to continue to disperse the subsidy. So has the government conducted any assessment as to the additional cost involved? And about Wang Chi House, other members already spoke on this point. What if over half of the residents in Wang Chi House reach a consensus for the government to acquire titles? So will the government then initiate the process, or will there be other factors to be considered? Thank you. To answer the second question about meeting the threshold, because there is no precedent and nothing in the law that provides a path for us, we need to be careful. Now, to answer Mr. Tam's question, if we introduce a threshold, we need to bear in mind the requirement under the basic law, and that is we should respect private property rights. At this stage, we don't want to focus on Wang Chi House. If residents of Wang Chi House are able to reach a high degree of consensus, we will definitely engage in the negotiation and exercise empathy in the process. Now, for rental support, say if some residents choose the Chonga Road West project, the intake of which will begin in 2029, that means there's still a gap of 2 years. And Mr. Warner-Chek's task force already explained that the government's rental support will continue until the time when residents move into their new homes. The amount will come from the support fund. Mr. Holden-Chak. The government has swiftly put forward this arrangement covering different options these are all viable options. But I want to say this. You've conducted this questionnaire survey quite extensively, and over 80% of residents would like to resolve the matter as quickly as possible. I just want to emphasize that against this backdrop, land resumption ordinance will definitely not apply. I want to explain this to those who are watching this webcast. First, the land resumption process is very long. Once you have posted a public notice, you must allow for 60 days for any objectors to stage their objection. If there is a dispute as to the compensation amount, the matter will have to be taken to the Lands Tribunal, and then both parties will need to engage their respective surveyors to conduct the evaluation process. So it's a protracted and painful process, not to mention the risks of legal challenge. When it comes to land resumption, in the past, very often it involved some major development and railway projects. On this occasion, however, things are different. It's because of a fire. In the past, the government faced judicial challenge because the government decided not to resume certain parcels of land, and residents of those parcels of land would then take the matter to the court, and it would take a lot of time to resolve this legal challenge. So it's a high degree of consensus, as recorded in the questionnaire survey, that the matter should be resolved as quickly as possible, and against this backdrop, we must not invoke the land resumption ordinance. I just want to elucidate this point. Right. Anything to add from the DFS? Mr. Chow is, of course, a legal expert. I thank him for sharing his insight. I have nothing to add. Reverend Peter Kuhn. Thank you, Chair. I thank the government for introducing this proposed arrangement. This is an exceptional case. In the past, something like this happened, albeit not to this scale. The government did not intervene. I have a technical point to make. Some members of the public are concerned about the acquisition price, and as explained by other members, the Hong Kong Institute of Surveyors once provided a reference price. Now the government has come up with two figures without much explanation. Now my next point is this. There could be residents who remain quite strong-headed, that they might not budge even if this acquisition price is offered. So how do you resolve this issue? Should there be stubborn owners? Now, like I explained to Mr. Mark Chong just now, when it comes to the acquisition price, I don't think there is any wiggle room, because if we change it, it will, the whole arrangement will fall apart. We go by a number of principles in setting the acquisition price, and let me repeat that as explained by the Chief Executive, we place emphasis on empathy, legality, and rationality. And this is also a special case and an exceptional circumstance. The third point is that we have regard to the long-term housing needs of affected residents, and some of them are able to find another home, such as Chung Ar Road West. Now, the per square foot price is $6,890. So if we offer $8,000 per square foot, that means there will be some money left for them to undertake renovation, and this is a rational and pathetic arrangement. Mr. Michael Lee. I thank DFS and other government officials for their efforts in coming up with this proposal which shows the government's commitment. The proposal strike a balance between the needs of Wang Fuk Court residents as well as the need to exercise fiscal prudence. Now, I ask my friends in the URA as to why the URA will not take forward this project. Now, for the URA to intervene, it should be a project that will allow them to get a return in the end. But on this occasion, the government puts forward a dozen options for affected residents. The government also engages the housing society. This is something that the URA will not be able to do. Now, the DFS already explained this point about mortgage. Some elderly owners might want to get a bigger flat, but they may find it difficult to apply for mortgage. So, are you going to explain to the banking sector about the stress test arrangement? DFS, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your support. Now, regarding mortgage, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority has already contacted the affected residents with mortgage not paid off. In my recollection, not many owners are involved. Some 200, less than, fewer than 300. And in our negotiation process, we have come up with this, assuming that the affected resident opts for flat arrangements, there will be the new flat as the collateral under the mortgage arrangement. And this is actually good for the bank concerned, because it will take a year or 2 years for the transition period, and a special arrangement will be put in. It's put in place starting from the end of last year. A moratorium of 6 months is provided to the affected residents. So, of course, if it's flat for flat, there will be a new collateral. The banks have responded quite positively, but there is no way to compel everyone to take this option. Now, for the other residents who would like to go for reverse mortgage, it's of course possible. Right. I stopped at Mr. Michael Lee when I read out the names of members just now. We have some 19, 20 members waiting to speak. For those who have spoken, I'm not going to allow another round. This meeting will go on until everybody has had a chance to ask questions. So, following this list: Junius Ho, Scott Leung, Grace Chan, Elaine Chick, Jonathan Leung, Dennis Leung, Jody Kwok, Lau Ka Keung, Ronick Chan, Bill Tang, Augustine Wong, Priscilla Leung, Judy Chan, Kitson Young, Andrew Yao, Julia Lau, Hong Kam In, and Chen Hok Fong. Next to speak, Mr. Junius Ho. Chairman, I support the proposal floated by the DFS and the Secretary. It's not just about singing praises. We need to be vigilant as well against those strong-headed owners not accepting the offer. Like Reverend Peter Kuhn just now said, I believe this could be the reality. I give you a double like for being very compassionate about the needs of affected residents, but you have not come up with any solution to handle the stubborn owners. I'm not even talking about Wan Chi House. Of the 1,500 households if two households are unwilling to move out, then what are you going to do about this? Of course, I appreciate that you're not compelling them to do so. Next, after acquiring titles, they will lose all benefits and rights, but I don't think it's as clean cut as that as far as the insurance terms are concerned. Usually, after acquiring titles, it's assumed that everything has been surrendered to the government, and there should not be any residual rights or benefits left. You need to make sure that this is the case, so as to stem out any unnecessary disputes. So give it a thought. The Land Resumption Ordinance will not cover the current situation. The URA is not the suitable body to take this forward. Now, this is unprecedented. The third point is this. Maybe you can consider invoking the emergency ordinance. We invoked that piece of legislation in 2019. Originally, it was said not to be suitable, but then it was invoked and it came to effect on the 5th of October. So you need to be prepared. If you have no other tools, I think it's just dumb.
Deputy Financial Secretary. Thank you, Chair, and I thank Dr. Junius Ho for your support. So I will not call those residents who refuse to move uncooperative. I would respect the residents' decision to not sell their home to us. If a decision can't be made by the 31st of August, then the owners will have to resort to the market mechanism to sell their flats, and that would be difficult. For the minority of residents who choose not to sell us their flats, we will explore any options, including introducing a new legislation to sort out the difficulties. But like Ms. Carmen Can mentioned, we respect the protection enshrined in Articles 106 and 109 in the Basic Law to protect private property. More discussion is needed. Mr. Scott Leung, Deputy Chairman. Thank you. I support the long-term housing arrangements for Wang Fuk Court residents. The arrangement has balanced helping the affected residents and wise use of public funds. Now, when the residents of Wang Fuk Court are asked of their preference, some said that they would like to purchase a flat in the secondary white-farm market. Now, this option is now available, so we should explain this option to the residents. I think this would even be more expeditious than buying a new flat in the new HOS projects. The government can step in to match Wang Fuk Court owners with potential seller in the secondary market. Now, about the 3,900 flats in the special sales exercise. Besides wise use of public funds, we have to consider the other potential buyers of HOS and GSH flats as well. So will there be two separate exercises, or will the other potential buyers be given the leftover choices from the Wang Fuk Court residents? Now, the government said that there would be more larger size flats, about 400 square feet. So if we can assure the residents that they will be offered a 400 square feet flats at the Chung Au Road West site, that would be helpful. And can we provide more professional help in terms of engaging the residents? A major obstacle is financial arrangement. It involves mortgages and other financial commitments should they choose to accept the offer. So we should give them more professional help. DFS, thank you. I thank Mr. Leung for his support. I will defer the question to Ms. Winnie Ho. Thank you. There will be 3,900 flags available in the special sales exercise. In the past few years, we have significantly increased the supply of public housing, including PRH flags and subsidized sales flags. We used to have only some 4,500 flags for sale each year. Now, in the HOS 2025 exercise, there are already 9,700 flags for sale. In the next 5 years, on average, there will be 12,000 flags for sale. So we have much more supply for potential buyers. Now, the 9,700 flags in the 2025 sales exercise, we will set aside some flags for Wang Fuk Court owners. It will not affect the other 7,000 flags, and there will be flags of different sizes to choose from, large, medium, and small. Now, residents may be more interested in urban areas, for example, Kai Tak and Kowloon East, so there will be half of them from urban areas, and the other half for others to choose from. We bear in mind the importance of striking a balance and fairness to other buyers. Now, for the Chonga Road west side, we are converting the PRH project into subsidized sales flags. So we are adapting the design so that the flag sizes are similar to those at Wang Fuk Court. The flags will be similar in size to the 400 square feet large flags in Wang Fuk Court. Thank you. Next, Ms. Grace Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I give my support to the government's plan. Now, someone mentioned the white farm secondary market. Now, will the quota in the white farm secondary market be adjusted? There will be a large number of buyers entering the market in a short span of time. Now, about the timetable of funding. Now, will the $4 billion be included in the 2026 appropriation bill, or will there be a separate funding item for the FC to approve? DFS, thank you for your support. The $4 billion will be included in the upcoming budget. Now, if the panel of housing supports our arrangement, of course, more questions can be asked at special FC meetings. But we don't wish to come back to LegCo again in May because time is a concern. Now, if the appropriation bill is passed by the end of April, we hope that we can start signing the provisional sales and purchase agreement beginning from May. So that's why we convene this meeting expeditiously today. Concerning the first question on the secondary subsidized sales flag market, we will give the owners green form liability. Now, Ms. Grace Chan is very familiar with this. There is a quota for white form markets, but there is not a quota. There is not a limit to the green form market. Ms. Elaine Chik. Thank you. First of all, I support the government's well-thought arrangement. I support the government to acquire the property ownership of Wang Fuk Court owners. I think government's intervention is the most appropriate way forward. But after all, public funds are not unlimited. Since we are invoking public funds in providing accommodation for Wang Fuk Court residents, we need to account to the public. So besides long-term housing arrangements, we must ensure that the arrangement is highly effective and that public funds are spent wisely. So Mr. Robert Lee asked a question about probate and inheritance. There will be special arrangements for these cases. But does the government know how many owners of the 7 blocks have been deceased in the fire, and that probate is needed? Concerning the additional $4 billion earmarked, I think that should be supported. But as I said, public funds are involved. So will the government be transparent in terms of the progress of the insurance claim so that the public will see the government is trying to limit the financial burden on the public coffers? About the engagement team, many volunteers in the team may not have experience in counseling. So if the meeting touches a raw nerve in the households, and if there are familial disputes within the households, will the volunteers be equipped to deal with these situations, and will they be accompanied by social workers from the one social worker per household scheme? I thank Ms. Chick for her support. Concerning the number of probate cases, now 168 Wang Fuk Court residents have deceased in the fire. We are greatly saddened by that. Now, but we will not make a conjecture based on that number. Concerning the use of public funds, in terms of insurance claim, we will try our best to make a claim. Ms. Winnie Ho? Now, the situations of the households are different, and sometimes residents need emotional support. So that's why we will provide some training for our volunteers, starting now. Of course, the details are important, but skills are also essential. Now, the cases will be referred to the engagement team by social workers who have been following up on the cases. So the social workers would remind the volunteers of the needs of the residents. We believe that with the referral mechanism, things would go smoothly. For cases requiring professional help, we will further enlist the help from the social workers. Next, Mr. Jonathan Leung. Thank you, Chairman. Since the fire, the government has been actively responding to resident needs. Residents are housed in interim housing. And like the DFS has said, most residents would like to be housed expeditiously. So I think this arrangement is swift and it comes with a lot of options, so it lives up to our expectations. Now, first question, the engagement team. Will the engagement team swiftly approach those residents who accept no other options besides in situ redevelopments and tell them that they may lose out on some opportunities if they insist on their choice? Now, concerning the exclusion of Wang Shi House, will the engagement team also tell the Wang Shi House residents that there will be some issues if a consensus is not reached? For example, the calculation of public utilities fees and management fees? And how do we set an acceptable threshold?
Thank you, Mr. Leung, for your support for our proposal. Engagement team. We have 8 blocks in Wang Fuk Court, including Wang Fuk House. We will contact all the owners and explain the details of the proposal, but we respect their final decisions. What's your next question about Wang Fuk House? Right, if they're able to get the consent of, say, half of all the owners, then we can start the negotiation process. However, another threshold is needed for the plan to be actually implemented. No current legislation provides suitable avenues for us. So we will have to enact legislation, and we need to follow the rules in the Basic Law as well. That means Article 6 and Article 105 on the protection of private property rights. We need to be very careful about this threshold. Mr. Dennis Leung, he represents the FTU, and he'll be speaking, and I won't speak. Right, thank you, Chair. I need to declare that I'm a member of the Subsidized Housing Committee of the Housing Authority, and I am speaking on behalf of the FTU. This blaze in Hong Kong is a one-off incident, is also a major disaster. It has attracted the attention of everybody in Hong Kong as well as our country. We need to take a holistic view of the matter. The government very swiftly responded by providing post-disaster relief, and I fully appreciate the help provided to residents. About a month ago, the government commissioned the Hong Kong University to assess the structural safety of the buildings. And Saturday, the government announced the long-term housing arrangements for residents of Wang Fuk Court, and I believe this proposal has taken into account the needs of residents as well as proper use of public money, abiding by the principles of empathy, rationality, and legality. The FTU thanks the government for accepting our suggestions on the long-term housing arrangement. In fact, the government also positively responded to my suggestion. On the 14th of January, I mentioned something like an engagement team, and that pro bono consultants or advisors should be engaged to make sure that accurate information can be disseminated to the owners, so as to avoid their being influenced by some outside forces. Now, I'm concerned about land leases and DMCs, be it payment in cash or flat-for-flat arrangements. I think the title acquisition process will be a complex one. Individual owners, corporations, even those equipped with legal advice will not be able to handle the matter properly, not to mention uncertainties in the insurance claim process. The government should explain the position very clearly to owners to make sure that owners make this decision to avoid inviting the government to step in at a later stage, because this will be even more difficult. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dennis Leung, for your support, and I really appreciate the invaluable views and suggestions offered by the FTU. Now, when it comes to DMCs and other legal issues, it's extremely complex. It's also unprecedented in Hong Kong. It's exactly the government's position. We want to help resolve the long-term housing needs of residents, and that is why we propose to acquire titles from owners so that we can take it up from there. There are other illegally complex issues that cannot be easily explained. Ms. Jody Kwok. Thank you, Chair. I strongly support this long-term housing arrangements for residents of Wang Fuk Court. This is a special arrangement under the special case of an exceptional nature approach, taking into account the wishes of affected families and balancing empathy, rationality, and legality to make sure that the homes in which the owners have invested with lifelong savings will not become worthless. However, I do have some questions. First, about continuity of the rental subsidy. The government has undertaken to provide rental support to affected residents who opt for subsidized sale flats until the intake stage. What about those who opt for payment in cash, or those who will find accommodation in the private market instead? Will the government provide one-off moving subsidy so that after receiving payment in cash, before they can finally move into the new home, there will be some sort of subsidy for them in renting a place or renovating a new home? The other point is about probate and legal support. Many households are affected by the fire, and the fire also involves title issues. Will the government exercise discretion because the deadline for making the choice is the 31st of August? Will a special approach be taken? Say for the engagement team, will any team member provide legal advice? Does any one of them have legal background so that they can actively explain the legal position to the owners in terms of probate issues, so as to help them make decisions more expeditiously? The third point is about alienation restrictions. As mentioned in the paper, under the special sales exercise, they are not subject to the alienation restriction, and if they pay if the premium is paid, then the flats can be sold in the open market. Now the prices are on the high side. Let's say if they choose an HOS flat in Kai Tak, that's a premium location. And if the alienation restriction is totally lifted, there will be a risk of speculation. Will the government consider keeping an alienation restriction, albeit of a shorter term? Well, thank you for the questions. Say for rental subsidy, before the end of August, an owner may accept our proposal of title acquisition in return for cash. We're going to disburse the second phase, second batch of rental subsidy. One batch is good for 6 months. We need to ensure proper use of public money. Meanwhile, about probate, in fact, we received an undertaking from the probate's office, but it's not guaranteed that all cases can be processed before the end of August. However, we will continue to keep all options open about a title acquisition, having regard to the legal reality. On the third point, I will ask Ms. Ho to supplement about alienation restriction. Wang Fuk Court is an estate of over 40 years of age, so the alienation restrictions no longer apply. And even if the owners choose a new housing HOS flat under the special sales exercise, we allow the alienation restriction to be lifted, only that they need to pay the premium in order to resell the flat, and that would be pegged to the market rates. Mr. Lau Kai-Kang. Thank you, Chair. I support the proposal. The Wang Fuk Court fire is unprecedented. It's a special case of exceptional nature. The government departments have all chipped in the post-disaster relief work, and after careful consideration and assessment, the government has floated the long-term housing arrangements for the affected residents. Options such as title acquisition, flat-for-flat arrangements are provided in a flexible manner. With empathy, legality, and rationality, the government is responding to the urgent needs of residents. The government also have regard to the wishes of the affected families to avoid protracted periods of redevelopment. Now, I think the government is quite generous. For flats with premium unpaid, for premium unpaid and paid, the acquisition prices are respectively $8,000 and $10,500. That's up by 30% comparing to the original estimates. And this is a special arrangement. Another highlight of this arrangement is that flexible options are provided, including flats under the Hong Kong Housing Society, totaling 3,900 units with different flat types and prices, to cover the needs of different families. The government also sets two deadlines. That's the 30th of June. Those who sign the provisional sale and purchase agreement will be able to choose a flat in advance. And for the second batch, this will happen by the end of August. This is also a flexible approach. Now, the engagement team should explain the nitty-gritty of the arrangement to affected residents as quickly as possible. Right, I'm sure that Mr. Lau has just made a comment. There is no need to respond to that. Next, Mr. Ronick Chan. Thank you, Chair. At the first meeting of the Council, I made suggestions relating to resolving the problems facing Wang Fuk Court owners, and that the government proposal also provides the greatest flexibility. I really appreciate the proposed acquisition prices. But I have two questions. Now, DFS, you just mentioned that some 200 flats are still under mortgage, so that's more complicated. If they opt for a smaller flat under the flat-for-flat arrangements, then it seems that banks can benefit from the process because of the new collateral. If they buy a bigger and more expensive flat, however, the banks may be disadvantaged. I suppose banks will be more accommodating under such circumstances. The engagement team will have to explain the situation very clearly to the 200 plus households. Will you make sure that there is close communication with the Hong Kong Association of Banks so that for flats with mortgages, these owners will be able to get advice and accurate answers instantly? And for the rental subsidy, it is said that it will expire in December 2026, apart from Wang Fuk Court in Kowloon Bay, and also Campton, and also Fanling, Kung Chung properties. For these other projects, the intake will only start later. You have two options. That is, either you extend the rental subsidy for those who move in later, or you manage the funds so that you generate return from the interest in order to subsidize other options. I don't know which one is more viable. Right, I thank Mr. Chan for your support. I think it's a double-edged sword. Regardless of the flat type or price that the owner chooses, the price, the value will definitely be higher than that of the original flat in Wang Fuk Court. The next point is about the transitional period. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority already discussed with the banks is about the change in the collateral. During the transitional period, no interest will be charged. It's a voluntary arrangements. Now, as I already explained, for the rental subsidy, the arrangement will be extended until the intake stage.
Next, Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Dennis Leung has stated the position of the DAB. Now, in the short span of 90 days after the fire, the government has done its best to offer post-fire alleviation, and a very comprehensive and sound arrangement has been tabled. We applaud the government's work. The FTU has been communicating with the residents of Wang Fuk Court. Now, most residents from the 7 affected blocks are agreeable to the government's plan. However, the dozen of families from Wang Ji House, which I have contacted over the weekend, are feeling very helpless. They expected a rehousing plan for them together with the other 7 blocks. And also, the maintenance work of the building is still in progress. The external facade below 19th floor still has to be repaired. So there is still a financial and emotional burden on the residents. And also there is the issue of deeds of mutual confidence. 1/8 of the households of Wang Fuk Court will have to bear the entire maintenance cost. So of course the government has pledged to offer help to Wang Chi House residents, and also when there is a high degree of consensus, the government will extend the plan to the Wang Chi House. However, according to the DFS response at the press conference, the $4 billion will be included in the budget, but that does not include an arrangement for Wang Chi House residents. Now, if the Wang Chi House residents can reach a consensus before April, before the passage of the appropriation bill, that would be great. So that's the hope of the Wang Chi House residents. DFS, I thank Mr. Bill Tang for your support. Now the $6.8 billion includes blocks A to G. That's the sum required to acquire all property rights from these 7 blocks. Now for Wang Chi House, if we extend the plan to Wang Chi House, it will bring the cost to some $9 billion. Now, of course, we need to obtain support from the electrical. The other issue is cash flow. Now, for those who choose flex for flex exchange, say for Chonga Road, the cash flow requirements will only occur by 2029. So there is still room for accommodating the Wang Chi House residents. Besides the budget, in the middle of the year, we can also obtain funding from the Finance Committee on an urgent basis. So the premises for that to happen is the consensus among the residents. If more than half of the Wang Chi House residents would like to be included in the plan, then we can start negotiation. Now, if threshold may have to be decided, and that may require legislation, so the timetable is still fluid. Mr. Augustine Wong, I support the arrangements, but I would like to reflect some concerns from my sector. There are questions whether the government is giving too much weight on empathy and compassion. It is 1/3 higher than the previous proposal. Now, just by a calculation. We don't think any residents would object to an offer which is 1/3 higher than the market price. So we urge the government to spend the public funds wisely, and please explain how much weighting you have given to empathy. Second, with a large amount of buyers appearing in the typo market, will it drive up the market price? I don't think that will, because there are some 800 residents looking for relocation in the same district. And say 200 to 300 of them would enter the private market in Taipo. So with that number, the property price in Taipo should not be driven up too significantly. DFS, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Augustine Wong, for your support. I would like to address both points. Now, for owners who accept the cash and buy a flat in the private market, there may be some 300 households doing that. And that would involve some 1,000 properties. Now, actually, some buyers may be attracted to urban areas. So we shouldn't be overly worried. Concerning empathy, this is a balancing exercise. This is a special case which will not set a precedent, and we really want to help the residents. Now, I'm repeating myself, but the $8,000 offer, there are some flags which the owners will have to pay more to get, but the $8,000 offer will cover most flags we are offering in the special sales exercise. Professor Priscilla Leung. Thank you. I support the arrangement offered by the government. I was the previous owner of a flat in Wang Tai House in Wang Fuk Court. And second, I've also followed up on cases whose homes were damaged in fire in my own constituency. So I think the offer is already quite attractive. But we have to make it clear this is not compensation. I also tell the media that this is a compassionate plan. For compensation, we need to sort out all the liabilities. And we have to sort out all the mortgage and insurance issues first before we can talk about the matter of compensation. So I support the acquisition offer. On the 28th of November, I already made this suggestion to the government. That is to use the $4 billion public funds to acquire the property rights. So the government has to pay $4 billion upfront, but of course I hope more people will donate money to the cause. Now, legality is important. We have to tell the residents clearly this is not a commercial transaction. We want to offer help to the residents and provide them with accommodation. So I urge Wang Fuk Court residents to make a decision swiftly. Now, we are still unsure as to how complicated the matter will get. Some people may be deliberately act uncooperative to ask for a higher price, and some may be emotionally attached to their homes. But the point is, the government is giving its best. So we advise Wang Fuk Court residents to make a decision soon so the government can interfere rapidly. But I don't think we should leave just one block out of it and leave it to the market mechanism. Now about engagement team. There are a lot of professional mediators in the market who have received professional training. It is not very costly to engage their assistance. So in terms of engagement, we should enlist these professional help as well as those from counselors and social workers to lessen the burden on the teams. That's my suggestions. So these are mostly opinions. Any reply from the DFS? I thank Professor Leung for your support, and we will consider your suggestions. Next, Ms. Judy Chen. Thank you, Chairman. Now, under the leadership of the DFS, the government has offered a very well-thought plan for the affected residents. I like how many options there are and how flexible they are. Now, there is an option where the owners can receive cash first. There is another option where the residents will get a voucher and they can get a flat on the pay more or get refunded basis. So my concern is, can the owners change their choice? After having made a decision. Now, there are mortgage and insurance matters to be sorted out. So I think it would be better if the government handle all these matters on behalf of the residents. Now, if there are still outstanding mortgages, will the government be able to step in once the government has indicated that they are willing to sell the title to the government, or will the government only be able to step in after the deadline of the 30th of June? Now, about the design of the Chong'an Road West project, I thank the government for accepting my suggestion to adjust the plans and designs so that the products are similar to the Wang Fuk Court. So I thank the government for changing the plan to make the Chong'an Road site more similar to the Wang Fuk Court. Now, for the Kowloon West project, the designs are already completed. But when will the residents be able to learn about the design and internal layouts of the flags before they make a choice? I thank Ms. Judy Chen for your support. Now, about changing the decision, we will be signing the provisional sales and purchase agreements by June, and the cash will be disbursed in the third quarter. Now, I think there is still maneuvering room if the owners would like to change their choice, but it would change a lot of things. But that's not a negotiable, because we are just offering the voucher instead of cash to the owners. Now, if there is outstanding mortgage, even after the cash disbursements, the owners still have to pay the remaining mortgages first. Now, for flag exchange, the owners can work it out with the banks. Alternatively, we can have the collaterals transferred to the new flags. So during the transitional period, we hope that the banks would continue with the ex gratia plan. That is, during the wait, the bank will suspend the mortgage and interest charged on the owners.
好啊，多謝主席，多謝陳。
I'll give the floor to Ms. Ho to take the third question about Chonga Road West. I hope members would understand that we go by the standard flat size of around 400 square feet. But then we have updated the buildings ordinance, for example, in terms of design of the HOS flats, things have changed. We've optimized the design. For Chonga Road West, I'd say that definitely we have revised the design. About the dozen projects, many of them are covered by the GSH and HOS 2025 exercises. The building plans are available, and for the housing society property building plans likewise, the engagement teams will be able to provide this information in the future. Mr. Kissenyang, thank you, Chair. I think the government's proposal is pragmatic and practical. It also has regard to the wishes of some affected owners of Wang Fuk Court. In fact, I have colleagues living in Wang Chi House, and they don't want to live there anymore because they feel traumatized. And like the DFS said, as long as a high degree of consensus has been reached, the government will be happy to start negotiation. Now, I'd like to follow up on the point of engagement teams. From the findings of the questionnaire survey, we already have an idea about the residents of Wang Chi House's house wishes. The deadline for this first batch is set on the 30th of June. And then the special sale exercise will begin in September. Now, will the engagement team reach out to the reluctant owners as quickly as possible so that the 50% threshold can be met to kickstart the negotiation process? The next point is, as mentioned by the DFS, another piece of legislation will have to be enacted to adopt the threshold. Now, whilst I agree to this idea, I think we should not be too lax or too stringent. For buildings of 50 to 59 years of age, we're talking about 70% for compulsory auction. That's the threshold. Now, Wang Fuk Court has a building age of 42. Perhaps we can make reference to the threshold of 70% consent. DFS. Thank you, Mr. Kissenyang, for the support. We need to be very careful about the threshold. I'm not going to respond to that today. About the Wang Chi House, we have an idea about their wishes at the time of the questionnaire survey. In fact, in the questionnaire, we have not set a question specifically for Wang Chi House. It's just a general indication. So, now, if there is a high degree of consensus for the government's arrangement to cover Wang Chi House as well, I think this will be very conducive to our future arrangements. Well, we've gone past the scheduled time for adjournment, but I see that 5 more members would like to speak, so I will allow these 5 members to speak as well before I adjourn the meeting. Mr. Andrew Yao, I support the government in floating this long-term housing arrangement. The arrangement provides different options for Wang Fuk Court residents. Over 80% of residents will consider the government's offer for title acquisition, either paying in cash or adopting the flat-for-flat arrangements. Now, the proposal has taken into account the wishes of affected families. The first question is this: 900 flats from Chonga Road West will be ready for intake in 2029 and 600 other flats in 2030. Is it possible to expedite the progress? And about the engagement team, what tools will they have in convincing the affected residents? To answer the second question, I think the engagement team will just lay out all the facts and be plain about that. We don't impose any quota for the engagement team. What is important is to disseminate accurate and clear information to owners. The Secretary will take the second question. I thank Mr. Andrew Yao for his point. In fact, for Chung Au Road West, I'd say that fortunately it falls within the same district, and in fact another public housing project site has started the site information process. It's been 2 years and a half, and we are beginning to build the lower floors, and for the upper floors, which is the residential portion, we immediately amended the building plans to suit the needs so that it can become an HOS flat. Of course, we strive to compress the construction timetable to accommodate Wang Fuk Court residents. But I'd say that at least we have revised the plans and started the construction. Next, Ms. Julia Lau. Now, I need to declare that I am a member of the Supervising Committee of Housing Society. I'm also a member of a special committee in relation to design and construction. I support this long-term housing arrangements for residents of Wang Fuk Court floated by the government. This proposal provides various options for affected owners. They can make the choices based on their needs. The government has had regard to the wishes of affected households with emphasis on legality, rationality, and empathy. It's worthy of our support. For the special sale exercise, I appreciate that as well. The government will provide 3,900 units in different districts and different estates. The alienation restriction will be lifted, and there is also the flat voucher option to meet the practical needs of affected residents. It's all due to an efficient government that we have various options for the affected residents. So I'd like to make this appeal to the affected residents. For those who'd like to stay and opt for in situ redevelopment, they should carefully consider these viable options. And in fact, it's a chance for them to buy a bigger flat and improve their living circumstances. In fact, different households can relatives, perhaps in the same housing estate, they can raise the money and buy a bigger flat so that they can all live together. In fact, I've come across such a case. My question is, the engagement team should focus on anti-deception efforts. This engagement team, comprising over 100 members, will start contacting the affected owners from the 2nd of March next month. I want to know whether the government will require the engagement team to make regular reports. There are also scammers trying to cheat money out of the victims as well as donors. There should be a publicity campaign to target deception. I also viewed some doctored photos, people wearing uniforms, putting up name cards. We need to be vigilant against impersonators. The second point is about transparency. We need to house the affected residents as quickly as possible in the long term. Will the government report to the Legislative Council the progress of title acquisition, flat allocation, and the use of resources to ensure transparency and fairness? Thank you, Ms. Lau, for your support. Now, about engagement, the engagement team, apart from the uniform and the ID card, we also have other safeguards. For example, the one social worker per household scheme will be one of the safeguards. The household will first be referred by a social worker. The social worker will tell the affected owner that somebody will contact you very soon. And in fact, it has come to the attention of the law enforcement agencies. In fact, recently, we came across a scam, and the law enforcement agency quickly intervened and put the situation under control. We'll, of course, step up publicity and ensure openness, transparency, and fairness. And we'll also regularly report to LUTCO. Next, Mr. Hong Kam In. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, DFS and Secretary. On the night of the fire at Wang Fuk Court, that's the 26th of November 2025, I went along with some voluntary workers to the park next to Wang Fuk Estate. I witnessed the blaze, and I also witnessed how helpless those residents were. It's really disheartening. I went back again later. And I also got in touch with some residents in a television donation exercise. I think it's common wish for the affected residents to walk out of this shadow as quickly as possible. The government attaches importance to empathy, legality, and rationality in drawing up the long-term arrangement. I really appreciate the government's efforts. Now, the next step is to explain things clearly. The government will set up an engagement team. In fact, in our motion debate on the 14th of January, I already asked the government to set up this team. My question is whether a bigger team will be set up, because the government is under a lot of pressure. Is there a way for those outside the government to contribute as well? My second point is this. There may be an expectation gap, and some residents may wish to lodge a complaint later. Is there an avenue for them to do so? My next point is that residents of Wang Chi House are also victims. They may also have their own needs, so another survey should be conducted to understand better their wishes, so that residents will not remain traumatized in the long term, and this will not become a long-standing problem for Hong Kong. Right, I think the third point is a comment. It's been repeated a lot of times. DFS? Sorry, I'm going to speak into the mic. Engagement team. The work of the team is to explain the government's arrangement. We don't want to put further pressure on one social worker per household scheme. This scheme will continue. I have to be clear. Say, if residents have other needs, the social workers under the scheme will continue to provide help. This engagement team is set up specifically to explain our arrangement to the affected residents. Complaint Avenue. Now, it's not about lodging appeals, because it's not about exercising powers on the part of the authority. We want the owners to understand the situation, but we respect their decisions.
Ms. Michelle Tang. Thank you. I speak in support of the long-term accommodation arrangements offered by the government. It is a very kind offer and it is very human-centric. Now, for premium unpaid flags, the offer is $8,000. For premium paid flags, is $10,500. It's some 30% higher than the market value, and it is subsidized by public funds. It shows the government's care for the residents. More importantly, there are many options. Residents can choose to receive a cash acquisition offer to enjoy more flexibility or get a flag-for-flag voucher. The government will also establish an engagement team together with the one social worker per household arrangements to offer help to households. The arrangement is one of warmth and care. It is also flexible while checking all the boxes. Now, for in situ redevelopment, it will take more than a decade and is therefore not pragmatic. Acquiring property rights is the right way to go. It is highly efficient and pragmatic. The government will also make this case a precedent, since this is a special case. We are complying with all the laws and rules. It is a right balance between empathy, legality, and rationality. I fully support the arrangement, and I hope the government can implement the plan soon so that all the affected residents can enjoy certainty and accommodation. I thank Ms. Tang for her support. The final speaker is Mr. Chen Hock-Fung. Thank you, Chairman. The government has offered a lot of options for Wang Fuk Court residents. I think that's very pragmatic because we all have different preferences and considerations. But I would like to listen to the government's view on certain points. For those residents who would like to be relocated in the same district, what about Wang Chi House? How can we match up residents who would like to be relocated in the same district with those residents from Wang Chi House who would like to move out? That exchange can resolve this issue. Now we are carving out Wang Chi House from the accommodation arrangement. So in terms of title deeds and DMC management, it is extremely difficult and complicated. The 8 blocks together belong to the same parcel. Now you are carving out one block from the parcel. So do we need to establish a new land title for the block? And do we have to establish a new DMC? Now some residents would prefer accepting an amount of cash. Now your timetable doesn't say when the cash will be disbursed to the residents. When will that be? DFS? Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your support. On the last question, subject to the passage of the appropriation bill by the end of April, we hope that we can start signing provisional sales and purchase agreements in May and June, and then there will be conveyancing matters to be dealt with. Now, in the third quarter, the cash will be disbursed. The difficulties you mentioned are real. Just like Mr. Bill Tang has mentioned, we incline to establish separate deeds and DMCs for Wang Chi House. Of course, we hope that the residents from Wang Chi House can reach a high degree of consensus. But failing that, we need to invoke new legislation. But we don't think we will only act after all the matters are announced. That would be too late. So for residents who accept our offer, we will make the commitments to them. So for Wang Chi House, there will be different phases concerning whether Wang Chi House should continue to stand. I have given you the government stance. So if Wang Chi House is not demolished, then we will leave it to the market mechanism, and we may offer additional help to the existing residents, but that's another thing. Thank you, DFS. All members who wish to speak have spoken. The DFS and the Secretary have responded to all the questions. Today, 38 members are present. 35 have spoken. According to my observation, all members have given their support to the government's arrangements. And on that basis, they have raised a lot of constructive suggestions to enhance the plan. So I would seek members' views. Is the government's proposal supported by the members? If so, the government will seek funding from the electrical according to the mechanism. Members, do we all support the government's plan? It's unanimous. Thank you. I also thank the DFS, the Secretary, and other government officials for attending the meeting. Any other business? There being none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.